Good evening. I am Veronica Shanis. I'm directing the Off the Page reading series for the 23-24 year. And I want to welcome you all to the first one of the season, presented jointly with the MFA program of the English department. Just a note, the Zoom is being recorded, so everybody should be aware of that. Tonight, Eugene Lim will be reading and speaking with Kaz Uy. After their discussion, there will be a Q&A session, and following that, books will be available for purchase and signing from Q and Willow Bookstore at one of the tables out in the lobby. Just a note for the people on Zoom, during the Q&A session, you can either raise your hand with the little hand symbol, or you can put a question in the chat, and either way, we will try and get to your question. So, Eugene Lim is a visiting associate professor in English and the MFA program in creative writing and literary translation here at Queens College. He is the author of 4 novels, Fog and Car in 2008, The Strangers in 2013, Dear Cyborgs in 2017, Search History in 2021, and the chapbook The Basement Food Court of Forking Paths in 2020. His writings have appeared in such journals as The New Yorker, The Believer, Granta, and Fence. Honors include a book award from the Association of Asian American Studies and Big Others 2021 Award for Fiction. He runs Ellipsis Press, known for publishing innovative fiction. And he will be in conversation with Kaz Uy, a trans writer who spent his childhood in the Philippines and earned an MFA in creative writing from Queens College. His writing shows his love for finality, horror, and the magic in the mundane. He now spends his spare time fighting off a family curse, which we all know can be very time-consuming, and can be found on Instagram at crypttypical, right, with the little @ symbol. I'm sure everybody knows Instagram better than I do. In any case, please welcome Eugene Lim and Kaz Uy.
Thank you very much. Thanks to Kaz for doing this, and thanks to Veronica for organizing, and for all of you for coming here. I know we had to reschedule once, so it's a great pleasure to be with you all today in this very nice space. I'm going to read a little bit from my novel called Search History, and there's a character in it named Jean, and she's going to tell a story, and I think that's all you need to know. Oh, and the chapter is called No Machine Could Do It. We were meeting for lunch near my apartment in Jackson Heights. It was a warm enough spring afternoon that we'd grabbed some empanadas from a Uruguayan bakery, made a second trip for some Vietnamese iced coffees, and taken our paper bags and plastic cups to sit on a park bench in the sun on a little grass and dirt half-block that passed for a park in our city. In other words, a perfect lunch. Jean said, I'd become friends with a public intellectual. He handled everything: scandal, sex, politics, political sex scandals, racism, weather, the racism of weather, Japanese cartoons. Everything was under his purview, but his specialty was the future. He was a much more successful college at the university where I would occasionally adjunct. Several years ago, entirely by accident, when collecting some papers from our department's office, not knowing who he was, I saw him standing next to the faculty mailboxes with a copy of a book I just read. I was younger and new to the place and excitable, and so I started up a brief conversation about the book. I think because I wasn't awestruck, because I had no idea who he was, the conversation went smoothly. And a few days afterward, we continued the conversation, which was rather pleasant, and soon after we more or less became friends. We had some important interests in common, but these were not quite overlapping enough that there was any real sense of competition between us. In a few other ways, we two were a good match. He was about a decade older, we were both divorced, and had daughters about the same age. After that first meeting, I Googled him and realized who he was, and he was famous. Academic famous, not TV famous, but still. I was embarrassed that I hadn't known who he was or anything even about his work, but I also was emboldened by my ignorance. It gave the situation a kind of ease, which somehow, especially at the beginning, was necessary and also gave it momentum. We had to play act a little, if this makes sense. Both of us had to continue the idea of my ignorance, even if it had become a fiction, to maintain our enthusiasm. But also, just after I found out who he was and the fact that he specialized and was renowned for a sharp-eyed, bullshitless analysis of the future, a question started to shift the gravity in my mind. Though this is difficult to admit in mixed company, perhaps this is because I'm the child of, quote, striver immigrant parents, but slowly, while maintaining an attitude of nonchalance and casual good humor, I found myself yearning to ask him something. This was a question that had long been on my mind, but to which I didn't think I'd ever find an answer. It was similar to when you by chance meet an orthopedic surgeon at a party and try delicately to bring the conversation around to your chronic and exquisite lower back pain, that kind of egotistical, obvious yet helpless maneuvering. My burning question was this: will there be any jobs in the future? What are the good jobs of the future, and what kind of jobs do you think our children might have in the future? I know that was 3 questions, but it really is just one question, disguised as 3 questions. When I finally gathered the gumption to ask it, the public intellectual was kind. He struggled in only a barely perceptible way to hide his contempt for such a crude and banal and selfish question. In addition, he was, as it should be said, quite practiced, as would become evident, in answering such questions, and so had made a career of answering them as warm-up or filler to, or most often as comedic relief from, the more refined, profound questions that he intensely wrestled with during his more solitary hours. So to my question, the public intellectual said, "Here's what I say to people when they ask. This is what I say." "Yes?" I prompted. I say, "You know how our pets are to us?" "Our pets?" I said. "Yes, our cats and our dogs." "Our dogs." "Yes," he said, "and our cats." "What about them?" I asked. He said, "We keep our pets because they are interesting to us." "I see," I said, not seeing. "In the future," the public intellectual continued. "Yes," I said, "in the future we have to be as interesting to the AI as our pets are to us." "The AI?" I said. "The AI," he said. I looked bewildered, so he dumbed it down for me. "The robots, the machines." "Oh," I said, "I see." "The AI," he said, "we have to be as interesting to them as our pets are to us." I said. Jean takes a sip of her coffee and pauses as a siren howls by. "Things have been hard for me," she says. "It's been over a year since we've had lunch. Time flies. Listen, what do I have? I'm a divorced and perennially underemployed adjunct. When I'm lucky enough to be asked at a public university, I teach the children of immigrants to imagine a better life for themselves before they live out their days in the service industry. I do this by making them write 5-paragraph essays. Listen, it's been hard. I'm basically couch surfing. It's embarrassing. Before, when I was younger, people would express optimism. They'd say, 'Don't worry, things will look up soon.' Now when I explain what I've become, they don't say anything at all. It's mortifying, but I don't seem to have a choice. Listen, I'm out of adjunct work again, and so have become a kind of low-level servant to the economic betters of my cultural class. That is, I've become a house and dog sitter. I'm currently on my 31st dog-sitting job. It's disgraceful that a middle-aged woman with a doctorate is employed as a house sitter, so I have to be a little dissembling. I tell people I'm working on a book and that the house-sitting job is a kind of ongoing writer's residency, a staycation, I tell them. This is for people I don't know well enough and so have a chance of avoiding their pity. Anyway, I'm currently in the home of Ramona and Jerome, 2 corporate lawyers who knew a friend of a friend of a friend of mine. Over the phone, I pretended I was a little more normal than I am, and since they knew someone who knew someone who knew someone who knew me, and more importantly, because I think they'd waited to the last minute and had become a little desperate, they gave me the job. No money, as per usual, but I feed myself from whatever is left in their kitchens, which is usually enough to last months. When I get to Ramona and Jerome's, here's what I do. I put their dog in the basement. I brought into the house a small PA system consisting of a speaker a little larger than a shoebox, a 200-foot coil of wire I stole from a previous job, and a handheld microphone. I go down into the basement and place the speaker in front of the dog, and then I uncoil the wire so that it goes up the basement stairs, around through the kitchen, then up through another set of stairs until I get to a bedroom facing the back of the house. When I get to the bedroom, I attach the microphone to the end of the wire and I click it on. I say, hello? Hello? Is this the suicide prevention hotline? I pause and I hear a faint and muffled bark from the dog 2 stories down in the basement. Hello? Is this you? I say. Is this the right place? Well, I hope so because I feel pretty awful. I'm right on the edge of giving it all up. I don't think I'm very good at anything. I don't enjoy anything. Everything tastes gray, and I'm alone, and all I do is eat butter pecan ice cream. I pause and listen, but the dog doesn't make any sounds. Hello? Hello? Hello, dog? I say into the microphone. Dear dog, I say. Dear dog, hallowed be thy name. I say into the microphone. Dear dog, hallowed be thy name. Your kingdom come, your will be done. My room looked down onto the patio outside the basement door, and the dog could go out there through a plastic flap to shit and pee. I was watching to see if he'd go out onto the patio. I'd set the speaker volume just loud enough that you could hear it in the basement, but not if you were out on the patio. I'd wanted to see if my voice would bore the dog. I say into the microphone, hello, is this returns? Well, it's defective, all of it. Also, it's not what I ordered or expected. Also, I found a better price elsewhere. Also, I wanted it in a different color. The patio is still empty, so I know the dog is still hearing my words. He's a mix, but mostly a Labrador, I think. His fur is black with some interesting brown underneath. His name is Izanami. I agree, it's an awful name for a dog. I say into the microphone, hello, is this the collection agency? I'm finally returning your phone call, you motherfuckers. I say motherfuckers as sweetly as I can because I want to curse, but I don't want to scare the dog with anger as this would discredit any results from my so-called experiment. Hello, I say into the microphone. Hello, collection agency shitball eaters. I say, I'm finally getting back to you after avoiding you all these years, but I don't have any money and I don't want to set up a payment plan, but I'd like to talk to an operator. Sure, I'll hold. I want to talk to someone about the early death of my mother and about my father's rages and about being into new wave electronic music in junior high and about how all that might explain things. I give up looking out the window and go lie down on the kid's bed. This is Ramona and Jerome's kid. I guess she's about 11 or 12 from the pictures in the house and from the room's decor. The bed is shaped like a cartoon character I don't recognize. For a moment, I think I could maybe use this cartoon character instead of the dog. That is, it occurs to me I might as well just start talking to the cartoon character, who is also a bed. This part is a nice detail. But then I decide I might as well stick it out and finish what I'd started with the dog. Who knows, I think. Maybe if I give up now, the dog's feelings will be hurt. Part of me is moved by this idea because maybe if it were true, and most of me thinks it can't possibly be true, but if it were true, if the dog were to actually be hurt if I happened to stop talking into the microphone, well, this would mean, of course, on some level, the dog was interested in what I was saying. This was enough for me to abandon the idea of just talking to the cartoon character, even if the cartoon character was a bed. I say into the microphone, hello, Betty, hold all my calls. I've got a big meeting with Mr. Money. I say into the microphone, okay, no more games. Or I say into the microphone so Izanami can hear my voice in the basement. I say, maybe only a few more games. Here's something I keep thinking about since my friend, the public intellectual, told me this hint about the future. I have something I like to do, Izanami. I have something I like to do, and I've never shared this information with anyone else. You'll be the first I ever told. Got it? Aren't you interested? Aren't you on the edge of your seat? Izzy, what I like to do is smoke a bowl and go to the aquarium and watch the jellyfish. Did you hear that, Iz? Did you hear my great admission? I mean to say, what I like to do is there's a bus that you can pick up not too far from here, and it goes all the way to the aquarium. It takes about an hour, but you can always get a seat. I smoke some high-grade cannabis, a bowl of it, right before I leave. I get very high. I take the bus to the aquarium. Then just outside the aquarium, I smoke a little more, and then I go into the aquarium and watch the jellyfish for an hour or so. And what's more, Izzy, while I watch the jellyfish, I put on my headphones and listen to Scandinavian death metal. I listen to a Norwegian heavy metal band called Kvelertak. I have no idea what Kvelertak means, and I have no idea what they're singing about, but the drummer is perfect. And when you're stoned and watching the jellyfish and listening to Caveller talk, well, it's just so fucking sublime, I can't explain it. So you see, what I'm trying to tell you about is how I met Sophia. I was at the aquarium, pretty stoned, and watching the jellyfish, listening to Nordic heavy metal, and I happened to look to my right. And there's another woman with headphones on. She's maybe 10 feet away, and I swear I could tell she was doing the exact same thing I was doing. I swear it. Somehow I just knew she was also high as a kite and listening to Norwegian death metal and just watching the jellyfish bloom their translucent selves into folding and unfolding umbrellas over and over again. I sat there for about half hour and then looked to my right again. The woman was still there. I was a strange combination of paranoid and religious feeling. I felt both suspicious and also like fate was laying its hand upon me. I spent some time thinking about this, and then I thought, fuck it, I'll just go ask her. So I go over and introduce myself. She takes off her headphones and looks at me. I say, hello, my name is Jean. She looks at me, then she says, hello, my name is Sophia. And then we sort of look at each other for a while. Then I sat right down next to her, and then we both put our headphones back on, and we went back to watching the jellyfish for another half hour. I thought such behavior only made possible sense if we were both high, so I felt confident about my theory. As it happened, after the half hour, she got up. And so I took this as a signal, and I got up and I followed her out. We walked to the bus stop together. It turned out I was only partially right. Sophia indeed also had the habit of watching the jellyfish for hours at a time, but she did it completely sober. Furthermore, she didn't listen to Scandinavian death metal. Sophia preferred 90s R&B. Izanami, have I told you I'm the product of stereotypically, quote, striver immigrant parents? Well, it's true, despite it being hard to admit in mixed company. But because this is true, the first narrative line I'm interested in while learning about a person's life is their labor history. So I asked Sophia about this, indirectly, of course, discreetly, but eventually I piece it together. Here it is, Izzy. Here is Sophia's labor history. She grew up in Ecuador and immigrated here when she was 17. She passed as a man in order to pick tobacco in North Carolina, where they sprayed pesticides on the leaves such that the workers made homemade hazmat suits out of garbage bags and rags, which still didn't stop them from coughing blood after a few days, and such attire certainly acted as a cruel instrument of self-administered sticky torture when worn during the blistering heat of 100-degree days. After several seasons of this, she came up north and worked for many years cleaning homes. And then one day she had a revelation. On that day, a delivery truck brought to their small apartment a wing-backed armchair of voluptuous, deep pile mauve velvet. She argues with the delivery people that there must be some kind of mistake, but they show her the name and address on the papers, and she has no choice, so accepts delivery. Her boyfriend at the time came home and explained it. He said, I bought it but didn't want to tell you about it because it was too expensive. How much was it? She asked. He said, it's an old chair, but it was in good condition and I got it for nothing. But then I had it reupholstered. You got it what? I got it reupholstered. How much? She said. $600, he said. Fucking shit, she said. And then they had a huge fight about it, and then they made up, and then they had sex. It was after, while she was lying in bed, that she had her revelation. Her revelation was this. She was going to learn to reupholster furniture. And that's what she did. It turned out to be incredibly lucrative. She'd always been clever with her hands. No machine could do it. And it turned out that the very rich in the city would spend obscene amounts of money to reupholster their sofa and their love seats and their chaise lounges and their armchairs and their couches. Obscene amounts. And now, Sophia told me, she runs a small company with 3 employees. But it's actually a tremendous amount of work, and she's beginning to feel her age, she says. And she's not sure how long she can keep it all up, because others are catching on and there's more and more competition, and so she's stressed out, and the only thing that relaxes her is watching the jellyfish for hours at a time, she says. And Izzy, don't you see? I finally get it. This is what he meant. This is what it'll mean to be as interesting to the AI as our pets are to us. It'll be like Sophia reupholstering sofas for the very wealthy. What do you think of that? I put down the microphone. I get up off the bed to look out the window, down at the patio. I wave at Izanami. He barks back. Thank you.